Quentin Blake, author, illustrator, and educator. Now, as an artist, I've always had a particular fondness for any and all types of art in the world around me. With this fondness comes a great respect for fellow artists and illustrators, and this draws anywhere from sketches, picture books, and photography to tattoos, street art, and murals. All of it catches my eye and, in turn, my adoration. Now, Quentin Blake is one such artist and illustrator. Blake has been an artist for as long as he can remember, and he's lived quite a life. Seeing someone such as this provides a form of inspiration that is awe-inspiring. Art block is a very real thing. Without inspiration, motivation, or the right mindset, it can be very difficult to achieve artistry. Blake has defied that and completed countless works, both as an illustrator in others' books as well as an author and illustrator for his own. Now, Blake was born in 1932 in London. Growing up, he attended Chislehurst and Sidcup Grammar School, and then he committed to national service. Following this, he studied English at Downing College of Cambridge. Then he completed his postgraduate teaching diploma at the University of London. To top it all off, he took some life courses at Chelsea Art School. Blake has had a thorough education involving all manner of subjects, especially that of English and art. His first drawings were seen at the age of 16 in Punch, where he continued to draw for many years. In 1960, he began working with children's literature with A Drink of Water by John Yeoman. Using his vast education, he has made his living as an illustrator and has taught for over 20 years at the Royal College of Art, as well as served as the head of the illustration department there from 1978 to 1986. Blake has collaborated with Russell Hoban, Joan Aiken, Michael Rosen, John Yeoman, and above all, Roald Dahl. He has also illustrated for classics such as A Christmas Carol and Candid. Since the 90s, Blake has also made a career as an exhibition curator. He has made large-scale works for hospitals and various healthcare providers in the UK and France. This man has accomplished a lot and continues to do so. Now, I'm going to give you a quote from Melanie McDonough of the Daily Telegraph. Blake is beyond brilliant. He is anarchic, moral, infinitely subversive, sometimes vicious, socially acute, sparse when he has to be, exuberantly lavish in the details when he feels like it. He can tell wonderful stories without a single word, but his partnership with Roald Dahl was made in heaven, or somewhere. The diabolic ingenuity of Dahl came into its own only when he wrote for children. In conjunction with Blake, there was a kind of alchemy. I've never met a child who didn't love Quentin Blake. Now, Blake has illustrations in roughly 300 books and has written 30 of his own. He's a major player in the artwork for many Roald Dahl books, such as The BFG, The Witches, Matilda, and Aesio Trout, all of which are award winners. Today, I'm going to share one of Quentin Blake's own. Quentin Blake, Mrs. Armitage, Queen of the Road. One morning, Mrs. Armitage came downstairs and found a letter on the doormat. She read it to her faithful dog, Breakspear. It said, Dear Anastasia, because I am buying a new motorcycle, I won't need my old car anymore. It would like you to have it as a present. It's parked outside. Here are the keys. With love, your Uncle Cosmo. Mrs. Armitage and Breakspear went outside. There was the car. It doesn't look very exciting, Breakspear, said Mrs. Armitage, but we'll give it a try. They climbed into the car and off they went. They hadn't gone far when they drove over a big hole in the road. Bing, bong, dang, boing. All the hubcaps fell off. Mrs. Armitage got out to look at the damage. Hubcaps, she said. Who needs them? She tossed them in the car, and on they went to the junkyard. But as they were going around the corner by the vinegar factory, scrunch, the fender was ruined. Mrs. Armitage got out to look at the damage. Fenders, she said. Who needs them? She tossed them in the car, and on they went to the junkyard. They were backing out of the junkyard when, scrang! The front bumper caught on some old bed springs. Mrs. Armitage got out to look at the damage. Bumpers, she said. Who needs them? She threw them on the scrap heap, and off they went. They had just passed the supermarket when a truck backed into the street. Scrunch! Right onto the hood. Mrs. Armitage got out to look at the damage. The hood, she said. Who needs it? She threw it in the trash, and on they went. There was quite a traffic jam beside the new building site where a big crane was moving heavy blocks of concrete. Back and forth it went, back and forth, up and down, when suddenly crunch! Mrs. Armitage got out to look at the damage. A roof, she said. Who needs it? She threw it in the trash, and on they went. Breakspear, said Mrs. Armitage, I think it's time for us to get out of this town. They went down a side road into the country. All around them were trees, and the birds were singing. Breakspear, said Mrs. Armitage, this is blissful. But the road got bumpier and bumpier. Ba-ding, ba-dong, ba-dang, ba-doing, clunk. All the doors fell off, and the trunk as well. Mrs. Armitage got out to look at the damage. All this stuff, Breakspear, she said. Who needs it? Let's throw it all in the trash and be on our way. But at that moment there was a roar. It was Uncle Cosmo on his new bike. His friends were there too, Gizzy and Lulu, Ferdinando and Smudge. They were out for a ride. They all gathered around to look at Mrs. Armitage's car. Wow, said Gizzy, that's a fantastic machine. We're off to the Crazy Duck Cafe for a game of billiards and a can of banana fizz, said Uncle Cosmo. You must come too. But first have this leather jacket, Smudge said to Mrs. Armitage. I've grown too big to wear it. And you and Breakspear must have collars, said Lulu. I don't need 3. And have one of our bendy flags, said Gizzy. We don't need both of them. And let me give you a horn, said Ferdinando. I don't need 5 of them, and it's always good to have a horn. Off they roared to the Crazy Duck Cafe, and out in front with her faithful dog Breakspear was Mrs. Armitage, Queen of the Road. Now, following readings such as this, in the classroom throughout the semester, I would take time to read different works completed by Quentin Blake. I'd make sure to set a time aside each week to read at least one, time allots then more, short stories created or illustrated by Quentin Blake. Then I would have the children share their thoughts, opinions, criticisms of the story. Each week throughout the semester, I will also set aside time for the children to work on their own stories. They need not be lengthy, but they should contain an extensive use of vocabulary, varying on the grade level of the class, and proper construction of a story, including characters, setting, plot, conflict, and resolution. Each student will also be given the materials necessary to make 1 or 2 illustrations to support their story. Seeing as that Quentin Blake makes use of his black ink and watercolor, I will provide black ink pens and watercolor materials for their artwork. By the end of the semester, there will be time allotted for each member of the class to share their stories in the author's chair. By this point, each story will be completed, reviewed, and revised if necessary before shared aloud with the class. To make proper use of the time given, only a few students will be selected during each read aloud session to share their thoughts on their peer's story. Seeing as we will have been practicing this throughout the semester, the children should have a solid understanding of what they should be asking or sharing with the author. Guidance will be provided if needed, otherwise the students should have a good understanding of what feedback is acceptable to give. This activity will give each student the opportunity to express themselves, both in the written form and the artistic, and they will have the opportunity to read and share a story of their own creation with their classmates, receiving praise and any constructive criticisms in a warm, friendly environment.